All right, my friends, I have six big stories for today. The first two are follow-ups, and some of them are very new and very important. So please stay all the way to the end. Okay, starting here, we know about the plane from Azerbaijan that was apparently struck by anti-aircraft, anti-air defense in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day. And so what I want to show you here is the pattern. It went from Baku and it went up over into Chechnya, and then it went on this weird path, and we're not exactly sure where it was, but they were told go back over the sea, don't come here into Russia, and they had to fly all the way to Kazakhstan, and it was a terrible crash. The Russian Federal Air Transport Agency attempted to blame weather conditions and the pilot's response to the Russian emergency airspace closure over the Republic of Chechnya as the cause of the accident. They also blamed fog. They also said there was an exterior, well, not them, but other Russian sources also blamed fog, also blamed, that was in Pravda. They blamed an exterior explosion somewhere. They even tried to blame a drone as if insinuating that it was a Ukrainian drone at some point. Okay, so Max Boot says the track record tells you what Moscow's word is worth in the crash of the Azerbaijan Airlines flight 8243. I mean, they've in past incidents, they just lied and lied and lied and lied. So you probably don't want to take their word for it this time either. Now, 26 regions of Russia are now closed or considered unsafe by international airlines. Fly Dubai, Turkmenistan Airlines are the latest operators to suspend their flights to Russia following the downing of Flight 8243 near Grozny. Israeli airline, Kazakhstan's airline, Azerbaijan's airlines have all previously done the same. International flights flying above 26 regions of Russia have been halted. Most of these regions have been regions that were hit by drones in the past. All the countries suspending flights to Russia have been a way for Russians to get to other countries, since airspace through Europe and the US remains closed for them. And now during the winter holidays, vacationing abroad will become much more difficult. So sad that vacationing abroad is going to be curtailed because of that. Now, second big story, the Finnish police published photos of the operation to stop the Russian Shadow Fleet ship suspected of sabotage. The armed forces included Police Rapid Response Unit Karhu, it's called Bear, and yeah, they're landing on the deck of this thing. And then, look, they're the newest NATO member, Finland. Well, I think Sweden came after Finland, but one of the newest NATO members, Finland, has confiscated the Russian-controlled Eagle-S oil tanker responsible for cutting the undersea cables. The ship was reportedly carrying sanctioned oil and advanced Russian spy equipment. So good on Finland for taking actual action to do something about it rather than just have strong words and say, don't do that again, right? That's never gotten us anywhere. Okay, let's turn our attention to big story number 3. Fico from Slovakia. Fico is threatening Ukraine with retaliatory measures if Russian gas transit is cut off. Now, this is a tricky subject for a number of reasons, and we'll get into that. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico said on Friday that his country would consider actions in response to Ukraine's suspension of Russian gas transit from January 1st, 2025. After January 1st, we will assess the situation and the possibility of taking retaliatory measures against Ukraine. Really. So it's not enough that they're in a war with Russia and they're trying to stop Russia from having more revenue to continue to kill their people, but you're going to retaliate against them. And they could retaliate by, say, cutting off electric excess being sent to Ukraine, which Ukraine desperately needs. And that's very well possible. Here is Zelensky's response. It appears that Putin gave Fico the order to open the second energy front against Ukraine at the expense of the Slovak people's interests. That's a quote. Now, I'm going to get into it a little bit more, but Zelensky has to be really careful here because he's got to thread a very tight needle. He needs Fico in order to get into NATO down the line. He needs for European Union support. He needs him, so he doesn't want to isolate him, but he also has to stand up to him and do it appropriately. And Zelensky's been masterful with his language. President Volodymyr Zelensky responded to the words of Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, emphasizing that orders from Moscow to Fico and the decision in Bratislava will not lead to a halt in electricity imports to Ukraine, but can definitely lead to a break between the current Slovak government and the European community. Quote, we remind Fico that, firstly, supporting Russia's criminal aggression is absolutely immoral. Secondly, Fico's short-sighted policy has already left the people of Slovakia without compensation for the loss of Russian gas transit. Now, what he's talking about there is that he had offered to pay the difference. If you're buying this gas from another source, we'll compensate you another 500 million for the difference of what you would be paying to Russia for the extra price of buying it from this other source, right? So that was a pretty good deal, and that would deprive Russia of that. And yeah, it's 500 million, but it still deprives Russia from a lot more. Okay, and may leave the people of Slovakia without at least 200 million more annually that Ukraine pays for imported electricity. Yes, importing electricity for rescue is not free, and it's a significant cost. So if they retaliate against Ukraine and cut off electricity that Ukraine desperately needs, it's going to cost them another 200 million. It's a significant cost. Thirdly, it would be more beneficial for everyone in Europe, and in particular for the people of Slovakia, to cooperate with our neighbors and the EU to increase energy supplies to Europe. Okay, I mean, that's a really good way of framing it, and he did it very, very well. Now, there are other things, like Russia's involved in doing the same kind of thing. Look at this with Moldova. Although having the possibility to bypass Ukraine through the Trans-Balkan pipeline, Russia's decision to stop gas deliveries to Transnistria starting with January 1st is likely to lead, as intended, to an unprecedented humanitarian crisis aimed at destabilizing Moldova. So Russia's using this intentionally, like Ukraine's doing it to stop supplies, stop flow of money to Russia because of this pipeline. And Russia's doing it in order to create unrest and a humanitarian crisis. Okay, now this is really interesting as well. Bloomberg was reporting this: stopping Russian gas transit poses a missile strike threat to Ukraine's gas pipeline system. Right? Russia wasn't going to do it before when Russian gas, like this whole thing's been weird because Russian gas was passing through a pipeline through Ukraine, and they were honoring the contract that now is going to be over as of January 1st. And they're no longer going to honor the contract. And while they did honor the contract, Russia had no incentive to blow up the pipeline because they were getting money for it. Now they do have an incentive. So Ukraine must consider the need to protect its 38,000 kilometer gas network, one of the world's largest. It's avoided attacks for 3 years as Russian gas has flowed through it. Without transit, it could become a target like storage facilities and power sources. So there's another interesting nuance to it there as well. Meanwhile, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, says that Slovakia's offer to host Ukraine peace talks, we were just talking about Fico, is not the only one. Yeah, we don't really need you that much anyway. The key is to shift toward a peaceful trajectory, but this isn't happening due to Kyiv's position. Yeah, okay, it's because Kyiv's the holdout, not because you're asking for maximalist objectives, like you're going to have all this territory that you don't actually control and no NATO for Ukraine. Okay. Now, the Russians never respected an agreement. This was on TVP. This is the Polish channel. The Russians never respected an agreement in which the Americans don't have a stake in it, says the editor of TVP World. There's something really profound about that. They're not worried about it unless it really has the force, not just of a few neighbors, but even of America. And if you see something like that come into play, that'll tamp things down. Otherwise, it won't. This is an incredible message from the Free Syrians to the Ukrainians. They said, quote, I'd tell them not to give up and to continue their revolution till they become victorious like us. It's a good message, right? Now let's look at Afghanistan and Pakistan. Kyiv Post, amid increasingly close relationship with Moscow, Afghanistan's ruling Taliban regime has announced an incursion into Pakistan, referring to the operation as a retaliation. Okay, what are we talking about? This is in CNN. This is in CNN. Afghan Taliban forces target several points in Pakistan in retaliation for airstrikes, the Afghan Defense Ministry says. But weren't the Taliban just taken off the naughty list not too long ago? Well, here's Jay in Kyiv talking about how it should surprise no one that Russia's new buddy, the Taliban, has just invaded U.S. ally Pakistan. The West still has no idea what's coming. They probably don't. And here he's posting this video from September 29th of 2023, where Putin was continuing to forge a new axis of evil for his war with the West. In the past month, Russia has brought in a North Korean dictator, a Libyan warlord, Belarus, Iran, South Sudan, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and of course the Taliban is part of that as well. Now this story I found really interesting, and that was this. China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan have started building a railway bypassing Russia. The new route will connect China to the EU through Central Asia, cutting delivery times by 7 days and boosting the region's role as a transit hub. Now that's something significant, and China is really going to press on with or without Russia, and they're happy to do it without Russia. Keep an eye on that. Now, yesterday I had a pretty bad day. I posted this last night. I know this is not the usual forum for this, but a lot of smart people read these posts. Here goes. One entire circuit, a room and a hallway in my house does not work. I replaced a circuit breaker, nothing. Ideas? I made sure all the GFIs worked. After an hour at the tax assessor's office and 3 hours at the Department of Motor Vehicles, I'm starting to get a little cranky. The right answer will get a shout out tomorrow if we can fix it. Well, some of you responded. Actually, about 100 of you responded, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for your time. So I'm giving you the shout out. Essentially, what happened was this: a wire that burnt out. So we were taking off the electrical outlets and looking and trying to figure out what was going on. My wife actually found this one. She's far better at this than I am. She's hot and can do this. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? Because it's charred, we're like, let's get an electrician to actually deal with making sure that this is all done right. So we'll have that. But we found the problem. So I want to give you the shout out that you deserve. So Gregory Kings. Now there's a number of you. Philip Upson, 4561. Thank you also to Mike Cox, 2872. To Brad Weber, 3845. To Jonathan McElravy. To URL Kruger, to Jim G 2550, to Chris Shanoff, to John Camp 8064, to Freedom 1988, to JM Jones 7897, to St. Georgie, to Contact Light Tommy. Justin Blackwell said probably a faulty outlet or switch, and those of you who also said something in the variation like that, thank you as well. Thank you. I really appreciate you looking out for me and trying to be helpful, even at a tremendous distance. All right, my friends, I'm going to leave you with this last thought. I posted this a few years ago and it just popped up and it reminded me in my feed. I fear no man. I fear open Sharpies. I fear my 4-year-old's knee when she jumps on me. Fears change when you have kids. I'm going to add electric wiring to that list as well, or as the British would say, electrics. Like you say maths instead of math. I think that's correct, right? All right. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine and me.